It's December 23rd, 2025. I just got off the phone with Jordan Gettys. My main question to Jordan was, and he can still reach out and ask his dad whenever. I didn't get a clear answer, but I was wondering why it was that Darren chose now. Like, what was it? Did he have an epiphany? What was it that Darren Gettys realized now as opposed to months ago when she was telling him all of this, that it was indeed a lie? Did he just realize that Janie was denying that? Because this issue has come up before. It's come up before, and I believe it was even brought up to Darren. Maybe my memory's a bit fuzzy. Not that I'm holding it against him. Like if Darren is really coming out and speaking out against Daniel and Janie about them lying in this circumstance, you don't need to go any further in this sense. You don't need to include other people yet without having a reason. But I continued on, and we talked about the substance use and its association to a greater group of individuals that Darren is referencing. Maybe Jordan. He did use a name. I'm not going to repeat it. It's unnecessary. But it was odd to me that immediately they're overlooking the lies that they've been told and still trying to associate a greater amount of people, strangers to this situation. Why? What is it that is linking all of this in their mind? We don't know all of that. That's why I reached out to Jordan and asked him some questions. Did I get any further ahead? Not really. Other than to confirm, really, this little scenario where Durwood came over and confronted Janie in the driveway about this shushing story, supposedly. Well, we've all known that that was nonsense from the get-go, and everybody was holding it against Durwood. Is that his only motivation? Is he trying to make it himself look a little better? Darren isn't representing the situation that well yet. I'm just bringing these up, not because they're valid, but because they're questions in my mind. They probably have answers to them. It's an incomplete story. I trust what he says because we all know that Janie and Daniel are lying. But they brought up an extended group of what Jordan referred to as dangerous characters. And I've got as though they weren't sure, but they were the ones associating this greater group to the kidnapping or an abduction, which is ridiculous. And I argued that. I said, listen, there would be some sort of evidence. If there was anybody else there would be evidence. The Garlock Road, there's a north and south. There's cameras, trail cameras. No matter if they're facing directly over everything in an ideal spot or not, you can still get a feel for the possibilities and the traffic on the highway during a certain time of day. And that's all you really need to focus on. That's to discredit their story or verify their claim. By the way, special shout out to NinchI's True Crime for putting this little graphic together, we'll call it, with all of the accumulation of messages. Left is the messages from DT and the conversation from Drunk Turkey and Darren Gettys. And the right is the other accumulated ones. Earlier on, from the particular chat. Now, I don't know why Jordan was referencing a new group of individuals. He was just mentioning it in passing, but we talked about it. Why he has it in his mind, I can only assume that it's come from Darren and his investigation behind the scenes. Well, I use that term loosely. Obviously, Darren's doing all kinds of talking in the background, but it seems rather biased towards Janie and Daniel. Now, personally, I don't think Darren has anything to do with anything. I'm still open. But he's an obscure individual and needs to be more concise and talk directly to the reasons why he thinks a certain way, or otherwise shut the hell up. You don't come out and get us all dressed up for nothing. You're getting a bunch of individuals who are thirsty for information, and then you mention things in passing and then wonder why they come back onto you guys. It's better not to even talk about your suspicions in that way because of your proximity to Daniel and Janie. Now, since I've gotten to know Jordan, I no longer think that him or his father associated in any way to substance use, this particular substance that we're always referencing, or its distribution. It had been 7 years before Daniel decided to come back and talk to Jordan. In my mind, Daniel's reached out to pull Jordan and Darren into this circumstance to add a layer of confusion and to have people out there in the moment that can help them cover their tracks. So really, this topic has been out there and people have been talking it down for quite some time. And I mean that this issue that Darren himself is now bringing up. Now, from an outsider, it looks like he's just finally come to his senses, so to speak, and realizing that he's being lied to. Well, if you're recognizing, Darren, that you're being lied to by the suspects, the last people to see the kids alive, there's no reason to incorporate anybody else. You can hold those individuals criminally responsible until they decide to open up. You let Darren and Janie tell you about everybody else's association. He's had no problem, meaning Daniel, putting all of this back onto Malaya and undermining his own credibility and story. He knows exactly what happened to Jack and Lily. It's impossible for them not to. They're not hiding anything but their own involvement in whatever happened to them. Now, it was interesting that, how should I say this? Jordan didn't want me to tape or share any of our conversation, so I'm just going off my memory. He didn't want me to audio record it and upload it in that sense. But interestingly enough, he incorporated or introduced something that he was talking about in reference to a greater child predator ring, we'll call it. Well, why would he introduce me to that? I don't know why exactly he was. Well, now could be just him coming up with alternative possibilities. I don't think that personally there's any more people involved other than old Daniel. So maybe they're trying to do a loose setup for a pivot onto a new theory coming from within, or people would listen to Durwood. Maybe there's something sinister to it. Maybe there's not. We can't trust Durwood or Darren Gettys at this point in time because of how unreliable his statements are and his bizarre behavior. That's on nobody but you, Darren. So that's going to take some time. Is he trustworthy? Well, time will tell. They weren't trustworthy because of their association to the suspects, to Janie and to Daniel in all of this, and how they were representing the information from the conversations that they had early on. It's very difficult for the audience to go back on that after that's done now, but we try to clarify things the best we can as we go. So it's up to you what it is that you think at this point. I found it interesting that he introduced this possibility of child trafficking, and that in contrast with what Wade Paris said in his comment, and probably in what he said in his Tint interview with, and I'll quote something, I'll paraphrase actually. He said something along the lines of probably could be that Daniel was trafficking, or Daniel was pimping out Malaya. Well, I brought up with Jordan, well, how do we know that if all of these things are being brought up as possibilities by the people that know him, well, how do we know that he wasn't doing that with his we'll call them the rug buddies that we don't know about in the background, and he was making side money off pimping the kids out? I'm just bringing that up as a possibility. I hope that's not true. But it seems odd that they're bringing up this scenario. Not that what they're bringing up is true or false. I'm just mentioning it because it came up in our conversation with Jordan. Now, personally, I believe Darren Gettys when he says that Janie heard a female escort the children out around 8:30 to 9. We've been through all of this. I can believe you, Durwood, and I believe you that Janie was misleading and the story changed. Why is it all of a sudden 7 months later that he's coming to this determination as opposed to when it was really happening? Maybe it takes some time. I'm not saying that that's a reason to call him out in this circumstance. I'm just curious, that's all. Because it seems to be the piece of information that's missing from all of this. That would be the interesting point. Not the fact of any one moment what it is that you believe. Why? What made you say that? I do not believe, personally, that Darren or Jordan have anything to do with the kids going missing at all. Other than they're being made a part of the activity after the fact. And Darren Gettys, it was selective. If everything that he says is true. Do I believe everything that he said? No. He's a bullshitter. He makes it hard to believe him. But ironically enough, we don't believe him because of all of the information that he's holding back. That makes him look as though he has something to do with it in a situation like this to the general public. In fact, Jordan did the same thing to me on the phone. Not that I'm assuming that they need to tell me everything in their minds and their brains, but he straight up, he all of a sudden our conversation gets into all of the things that he wants to say and all of these names. Well, the problem with all of this is, guys, is you have to know the difference between what it is that you're theorizing, brainstorming in your mind, and what it is that you're comfortable saying based off of the facts that you know. You have to distinguish the two. Or else people get it in their minds that your brainstorming part and the possibility and you adding the extra, they make it out to be more than it is when it doesn't have to be. Hence your hesitation to share the information. So it seems like they're talking Jordan and Darren in the background, and they're probably trying to put two and two together based off of what they feel is true to them personally. And that still doesn't align necessarily with the greater general public. I got a laugh out of it because the reasons why people were suspicious of Darren and Jordan in the first place had to do with the substance use within the home. And people just naturally assume that everybody Daniel is friends with, of course we wouldn't know any of the difference, is going to be associated with that as well. And in this case, it's just not so. It's just not so. And I don't expect everybody to necessarily believe it. I'm just trying to undo some of the misinformation that has grown on its own over time because of the things that we don't know. I believe Jordan and the things that he says, the things that he tells me. I believe that Jordan and Darren are essentially being used. Now, a lot of people are still suspicious of Darren's purpose within this Jack and Lily investigation. He's an individual in the background that has access and can drive down and has an established relationship with the two suspects at this point in time. I take it for what it is. I'm trying not to hold too much against Darren at this point. In fact, the more that I get to know them, the more comfortable I am in expressing that to everybody. And I hope maybe that rubs off on you, because we have no reason in that sense to suspect either of them. Although I found it interesting that they were talking about, and that Darren and Jordan together were talking about this group, and I'm using parentheses, this group in the background, this child trafficking organization in the background, very dangerous individuals that they were coming up with. And they're not sharing their names or who they were, but why is it that you guys are all of a sudden bringing people up? Let me explain that. That's what the general public was associating Darren and Jordan with, and now they're taking that and associating other people in their immediate, like in Pictou County or area in that sense. It's such a bizarre scenario. Whatever the answers are to all of this, Daniel knows. It's not important that we're searching for all of these other individuals that people keep introducing when the lying suspects are right in front of you. The danger was within the home here, and that's where it remains. Daniel and Malaya know all of the answers. It's not for us to figure out. It's going to be up to them to confess. And if they don't want to confess, they can go and rot in prison. No matter what the finite details are in the fate of Jack and Lily, Daniel and Malaya and Janie are still responsible. All you have to do in court is prove that Daniel, Janie, and Malaya are being deceptive, are lying, in order to establish your case of circumstantial evidence that's going to bring justice for them. And then, like many other cases, some that the information comes out through the court process, some it doesn't. It's not going to matter when it comes to their heinies in the Hooskow. So I called Jordan in this sense to see and pick his brain as to whether or not he could verify the information that we were sharing yesterday, and it's being sent around. Justin was focused on it as well. And yeah, so it seems what we're seeing is legit in that sense. Like now, I mean, we can pick on the timing, but it's only good for a day or two. We need something to talk about. I mean, it's better late than never. But let's see where it takes us. Surely, if this was as legit as we feel it isn't, we do, then one thing means to another. You've got, let me pull this up again. You've got Darren talking to everybody. Hold on here. You've got Darren saying, too many liars, including Daniel. Guys, stop what you're doing. If you're recognizing the two individuals, Janie and Daniel, have been misleading you, deceiving you, lying to you, why do you think that reason is? Why do you think that is? No matter what the reason is, it has everything to do with why Jack and Lily are no longer around anymore. Daniel will probably want to tell you that it's because, he was lying for a reason. And he wants you to then believe in his reason, right? Oh, I had to lie to mislead the perpetrators out there because these fictional individuals who may or may not exist could be watching. And I have to do things a certain way. And I had to tailor my narrative specifically to this fabricated individual. Darren, Durwood, if you realize that Janie is lying to you, then it has to be because she knows more about what really happened to Jack and Lily on May the 2nd or May 1st into 2nd. Nobody wants to fill in the blanks when it comes to what it is that they did. Here's the problem with all of that. You see how full of holes and loose Swiss cheese like in resemblance the alibi, each and every one of their alibis are, because they all say the exact same thing. It resembles something that's rehearsed and fictional. It would maybe deviate. But why is it they're all so hard to recite the same really 10-minute, maybe 10-second story, I should say? How should we say what they're... Because what they told the public. They're covering for each other. But we've not recognized that we've got three people covering... Well, we have recognized. Three people covering for one another. The only thing that aligns is the holes they're leaving in their timeline. Those holes still need to be filled. And the holes in the timeline can be filled by either Malaya or Daniel far after the fact. They were all together. They always do everything all together, don't they? They did for the previous 48 hours. Wednesday, Thursday. Daniel has a history of DV, a bad temper, and so does everybody else. It's not hard to imagine Daniel flying off at the handle when he's been raised by Janie and Earl. They're perma-pissed. They're angry people. And they're not afraid to lie. This is a little slice of hell in Nova Scotia.